Hello and welcome to this Conversation in Conservation Careers session. I'm Darren Johnson, Careers Consultant at Cambridge Careers Service, and with me today is Cambridge graduate Sian McGuiness. Sian graduated in 2015 with an MA in Natural Sciences and currently works as a lead advisor for Natural England. Before this, Sian completed internships with DMAD, Marine Mammals Research Association, the Sea-Watch Foundation and OSSA Conservation. Sian will provide an overview of her career pathway since graduating and will focus specifically on how useful her internships have actually been in helping her to secure her current job. And we'll talk through what a typical day is like in terms of duties and tasks, challenges, but also achievements in her current role. And finally, we'll round off with some tips and advice on where to look for internships, work experience, and other paid opportunities within the sector. So welcome to the session and thanks very much for coming in today, Sian. I'd like to start just by asking you to provide us with an overview of your career pathway to date since graduating.
Hi, yeah, thanks very much for having me. So after graduating in 2015, I actually went more into the private sector. So I actually started working for a headhunting firm in executive search recruitment. And I think after graduating, I wasn't too sure what I wanted to do with my career. So I worked for a rowing group for 2 years. But during that time, I really realised that my heart lay in conservation and I wanted to get into the industry, and then I needed to figure out really how I was best to do this. So I went and did a master's degree in conservation studies at the University of St Andrews. So that was a 1-year interdisciplinary degree, and it taught me a lot of key skills that I needed in conservation, such as coding in R and kind of QGIS, and it was a really good kind of variety that really showed me kind of the broadness of the industry. So after I graduated from my MSci, I then was looking for internships around the world. I was looking for anything that would take me. And I managed to land an internship for OSSA Conservation, which is an NGO that's based in Costa Rica. So I went out in January 2020 to work as an intern for OSSA Conservation, and a lot of my role was working with the fishermen and the communities there in order to try and ensure the sustainable use of the Gulf, which a lot of the fishermen were using kind of artisanal fishing. Unfortunately, COVID put a stop to that a little bit earlier than I had hoped, which meant that I was back in the UK in March 2020. And kind of ending up back in the UK, I wasn't too sure what to do, but I emailed around quite a few NGOs just to see if anyone needed any help at the time, or if anyone had any space or was kind of having any interns or wanted any interns. And I managed to get an internship with Sea-Watch Foundation, which are based in Wales, and they had room for a national whale and dolphin watcher system. So originally this was meant to be a couple of months' work, but it ended up going from kind of June to December of that year. And my responsibility was organising the national watch that Sea-Watch Foundation conducts every year in order to get a snapshot of the UK or what is in our UK seas. After this, during the same time as this, I also managed to get an internship with DMAD, which is the Marine Mammal Research Organisation, on their Montenegro project. So then I went out to Montenegro, and this gave me a lot of like the hands-on in the field researcher experience that I wanted in terms of marine role. And I was with them for 4 months, from August to kind of December. But from this, I continued to work with them, and I actually managed to get a paper published on bottlenose dolphin decline in Montenegrin waters. So that was really great. And I continued to work with them after that on kind of a, let's try and get the paper finished while also doing my day job, I guess. And after that, that's when I joined Natural England as a lead advisor. I joined them in their wildlife licensing department, and I've now been with them just over a year.
That's fantastic. Thanks for that great overview, and lots of really interesting types of roles you've been involved in there, Sian. And I'm just wondering for current students listening into this who might be thinking about kind of internships, doing things similar to what you did. What do you think might be some of the sort of challenges they need to be aware of when trying to source internship opportunities?
So yeah, of course. So I think funding yourself through the internship is a big thing. Not many of the internships, unfortunately, are paid. We are going to work with NGOs, we're working for charities, so even their full-time staff are not on big salaries. A lot of people are doing it because they really love the industry and really care about the cause. So I think one of the big things is being able to fund yourself. I still work for the executive search company that I worked for in my first 2 years out of university, and that really enabled me to take the opportunities that I could, because a lot of the opportunities, some of them you do have to pay for. Unfortunately, some of them are free, but you might have to fund yourself to get there, or fund kind of some basic living expenses while you are there. So yeah, funding, and also really emailing, getting yourself out there, asking people about internships, utilizing connections. So many of my internships have come from asking a friend of a friend who might have done that internship before, or asking a friend whose neighbour works for their NGO. It's really trying to branch out and grasp at as many straws as possible to get your foot in the door, really.
And that's really interesting in terms of, yeah, the importance of kind of speculative and creative kind of job hunting. And I guess around that, for those students listening in, or graduates who maybe lack confidence in that side of things, or are new to networking and speculative applications, do you have any sort of advice around that in terms of how to try and make that an easier process?
Yeah, so I think sending emails is a really great way to connect, and also on LinkedIn. You might not get responses, but also you don't need everyone to respond. You just need one person to respond. And I think so many people who get into the field know how difficult it is to get into the field. Actually, I found that people have been really helpful and people are really encouraging. And so it might be a bit daunting, but actually if someone reached out to me, I'd try and help them as best as I could to get. That's why I'm here today, is because you do want to give people the best shot that they can to get into potentially a bit of a difficult area.
Oh, that's great. What's a typical kind of day like for you in your current role as a lead advisor?
Yeah, of course. So unfortunately, because of COVID, it means that my job is a bit more desk-based than it used to be. However, I think that things are changing and people are getting back in the field a lot more. But basically what I do in wildlife licensing is I work with protected species in the UK, so particularly bats, water voles, and also piscivorous birds. And what tends to happen is we get license applications for people, for example, bats. Someone might want to destroy a bat roost because they want to build some housing developments. And in the world that we live in, the developments do have to happen. However, we want to look after the bats and ensure that the bats maintain their favourable conservation status. So a lot of my day-to-day job is looking at license applications, talking to ecologists, gathering a lot of information and making a judgment based on my ecological knowledge as to whether that means that the bats, for example, are protected in that area, and that the species kind of population status is maintained. We also check up on previous applications, which is a lot of where our compliance comes in, and that might be where I get to go to site and check what have they been doing? Have they been putting in their mitigation and compensation so that everything is correct? And realistically, is that population of bats or water voles, are they still thriving like they were before?
How important were your previous work experiences? So not necessarily just your conservation work, but the other work that you've done as well. Do you feel to really helping you land this role that you've actually got now?
Yeah, so I think they've been really vital. I think the work that I do for Rowan Group obviously has helped me fund where I am today, but at the same time, it does give you really valuable skills around kind of interacting with customers, stakeholder management, winning people round to your way of thinking. But I would say my internships have been really critical. They've taught me so much. A lot of the competencies, so when you apply for a role in the civil service, everything is competency based, and you have to use your past experience to demonstrate your future working abilities. And a lot of what Natural England asks for is around stakeholder management. And so, for example, my internship with Otter Conservation, I was working directly with fishermen and working with local communities, and that has been a valuable experience. That really means that when it comes to those competencies, you have really great solid examples of what you've done in the past to make sure that they know that you can do it in your current role.
And what are your hopes for the future in terms of where you hope to progress future-wise?
Well, I'm very excited. I've got a new role for the Marine Management Organisation. So that should start in the beginning of April, so quite soon from when we're recording this. And that's more aligned with what I would like to do long term in terms of marine conservation. And this particularly will be as a marine planner, so in the sustainable development of our marine areas around the UK. I'm very excited about it. And then long term, I'm not too sure. I think I would continue to work my way up in the civil service. Whether I then want to move out into a charity or an NGO, I'm not too sure yet. But I think at the moment I'm trying to get a good broad skill set that means that doors will be open to me in the future.
That's great. And just a final question, Sian. Particularly in terms of sort of getting work experience and internships, do you have any recommendations of where students and graduates might kind of look for opportunities at all in the conservation sector?
Yeah, so there's some really great websites. I believe there's Conservation Careers is a great website that has a lot of internships and just jobs in general. One of the things that I did is I honestly looked at NGOs in the UK that I would be interested in, and I just started to email people. LinkedIn's a great tool for finding people and also finding maybe people where you want to be in 5 to 10 years time and seeing what they've done and where they've been. But yeah, there's lots of, I'm trying to think what other ones. There's Wise Oceans also have some good career prospects on their page. I think they have an email list.
That's great. So just to say a really big thank you for joining me today in this conversation in conservation careers. It's been a really good overview of your role and some really good sort of insights and tips and advice. So thank you very much for your time, Sian, today.
You're very welcome.